So you're this is something you built before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's got like you can push the input and turn the age down if you want. It goes from clean to ugly. And then let's turn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I put a limiter on the end, because in sound design you're just kind of doing things without thinking, and sometimes you end up with super crazy loud stuff. But that's the point, is spending a lot of time and fine-tuning it. So yeah, there's also tape chew, but the warp and flubber is something I really like, because
the people that are watching, we will be giving away this rack for people to explore. Would it be possible for you to build something similar to this? But I mean, I'm not going to ask you to reinvent the wheel here, but I don't know if it's worth trying to do something similar to that, or maybe explore the tape thing. Like, how did you do these effects? Can you show us the
You want to see the inside under
just
the
a little
hood?
bit?
Yeah. And this probably took me 4 hours or so to put together. Basically we have a couple of frequency shifters here, and these are connected to the warp and flubber, and you can see it's moving stuff very subtly. We have the amounts moving as you push it up, but the two frequency shifters in tandem create the nice, it sounds like an old Boards of Canada pad in some ways.
Yeah.
And let's see, I'm going to turn down
yeah, it's a bit loud. I think...
Yeah, let me put another note in there.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the note, I think. Just kind of adds a nice...
Maybe turn it down a little bit there.
So, yeah, we have auto filters. I mean, it's all stuff working in tandem, and we have a hiss section here. It's a lot of groups inside of this group, and I've done a lot of mapping, as you can see, a whole lot.
Wow.
And it's a lot of tweaking and fine-tuning. But I really liked to build these things and save them, and just have them for later. I've got hundreds of these things like these that I've built that really help speed up my process, and I'll spend a lot of time when I don't feel like doing anything else of just exploring building stuff. It's like playing with Legos, or it's kind of modular in some ways too, the thinking. You have each one of these like a separate effect running one into the next, and as you can see, you can have as many effects as you want just about, and we got 9% here, Ableton barely bats an eye, so, just have fun with it, I'd say. You could even, do several of these in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pull in a generator here that's kind of a similar rack thing. Let's see, the texture monster. Oh, I guess I'm still recording here, so I'll go ahead and delete this. And this kind of creates, this has several sections of it. We've got a drone section. Let's see if I can tune it. Yeah, it's soon to see, of course. I always like to layer a lot of things and try to create a masked sort of morphed version of a lot of things running in and out of each other to make a fascinating sound, like just one synth by itself is probably not going to cut it.
We were talking about sounds that you really enjoy as a sound designer. I mean, I see sound as wine or food sometimes, where the more you're exposed to it, the more eventually you become picky, or you are looking for specific things.
Yeah.
We talked about high frequencies, but from what I see, you seem to really enjoy subtle little things.
Yeah, as a personal art that I do, it's mostly an ambient sound as with the Off the Sky project. So I do find myself oftentimes ending up creating this sort of type of sound. And it's pleasing to me too, you know, if I'm going to listen to something for hours and hours, it's nice to have something that's very soft and soothing, you know.
A lot of people would see this, and with the amount of distortion that you're putting in there might be really scary for some people.
Yeah, and
so.
I think it's okay to try to just, you know, drop a plugin in, see what happens. Okay, just to remember, okay, that's what this plugin does, and you know, like if you really wanted like a super high, just like crispy, crackly type of sound, you know, a distortion like this could actually end up being kind of useful because you can high pass it and just have this like super high end kind of end sound, and you could drop an auto pan on there and take the phase out, and you got yourself a nice tremolo. And there you may have yourself like a really simple type of hi-hat, you know. But that's a starting point. That's actually something that could possibly be useful. And you can always just like turn that, you know, way down in the mix. Maybe not the best hi-hat, and I'd want to put more modulators on the end of it, perhaps a chorus. I think.
So do you find that textures in sound, like the ones that people could easily replicate, would be about shaping little details like that and then putting it really low volume?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if it's a really annoying sound, try listening to it at a very low volume in the mix, just to see what happens. Try rendering or printing it down and pitching it down 2 octaves and see what happens. Maybe try running it through a reverb. Try, you know, this is partly my bag of tricks in my head is you know, and oftentimes I don't know what's going to happen, but usually in the process of it, I will always learn something about the plugin that I tried to experiment on it with. Or, you know, oftentimes nothing really great occurs from it, but, you know, in the end, I feel like it was a good exercise, and I learned patience for one, which is absolutely huge and goes timeless for becoming a great artist, I think, just having a lot of patience. But I'm so surprised with myself that years later I usually save all the sounds that I make in some form on a hard drive, and you come years later and use a sound, it is like something totally new and usable to pull back into a project after years of just sitting there thinking it was garbage at one point, and then later on in time it's like, oh, this actually really works, or is an inspiration point to jump off of.
Yeah. So I would like to let you try to. I would like to see you just in action, like work and see where this is going to lead you to. We started with the main idea of turning something digital into something more texture and analog sounding. Jason cheated by starting with the analogs, which is fine. And let's see where we can go with that. Okay, so how about we take the most generic pad from Operator and try to turn that into something analog sounding.
Let's give it a shot.
Does that seem scary for you? I guess not.
Nothing is, and that's something I've trained myself, is that anything is possible, and that nothing should be off limits, and that you should try everything, and
I like that.
it's just a philosophy that you should adopt in your own special way.
So you go with a simple sine, huh?
Yeah,
Like
and
you were saying.
oftentimes I'll just use the keyboard and turn the keyboard mode on, and simple sines are a great starting point. Kind of like this rhythm.
Yeah, there's something a bit 50s UFO sounding.
Yeah, it almost vibrates with itself a little bit. But it's a very clean sound at this point,
Yeah.
you know, which could be useful for some cases, you know, and I always remind myself of that. There's no such thing as a bad sound in every context. Something could be useful. I like the overdrive. Its default setting is a little intense. I'll definitely turn the drive down just a little bit, and I like to low pass it. And I usually turn off the dynamics, and you get just some nice little overtones. And I will recommend saving the defaults as you like them. So like with the overdrive, I usually turn the wet all the way off, save the default preset. Yep, and then so the next one I load in, I'm not getting this distortion just hitting me right in the face, you know? So I like to sometimes stack two. It can almost work as an exciter. So the overtones the first one makes get boosted by the second one. It can be very subtle, and sometimes it, you know, I guess I should turn the first one up a little bit. We probably want to modulate these too. Yeah, I think I need to turn the retrig off and give myself a lot more voices.
Do you want to turn off the other one so that we can really focus on this one?
Sure. So it's pretty static, if you will.
Yeah.
I think one thing that can be done is taking the auto pan, taking the phase all the way down, and then turning up the amount, and you get a tremolo effect.
Oh, it's like kind of creating rig mod a little bit.
Yep, all the way up, and which can be interesting for some cases. And if you stack two of these in a row, you can get, and I sometimes will just turn the amount halfway, but you'll get a lot of variance in sort of volume along the way, since these are all set to different rates. And then I will take a delay and do the spreading that I did on the last pad. Let's take this off sync.
Back to the Haas.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing for pads. You don't always want it necessarily. If you want to be really purist analog, you just stick with mono, because a lot of the old gear is literally mono, and you just put a reverb at the very end of your mix. I tend to like to think a little more outside of that box. But for some cases, yeah, you want to sound really old school lo-fi. Let's see, some other things we can do. Let's see, right now I want to group this. I want to give this whole section of effects a wet and a dry, basically, to be able to turn the whole thing down. So I'm going to create two chains. I'm going to drag both of them the full extent. I'm going to make the top one, I'm going to drag just this top fader section all the way over to that side in this one. And then I'm going to map to this top bar here. And now, if I turn this up, we get our effect. We'll call this dry to wet. Oops. Here we go. Now, this is something that I highly recommend as far as sound design goes, is to have this dry wet rack in your arsenal. What I'm going to do here is go ahead and make an empty one. So I will remove all of these. Call this dry wet.
I should have one.
Well, I'll give it to you now. So here we go. I'm going to right click, and just like I did with the distortion, save this as default. So now if I go up here and I just double click on an effect rack, basically, boom, I get one of these, and I can start filling it up with all kinds of crazy stuff.
Now you can start over what you were doing.
Yep, make a new chain. That's basically for the...
I really like what you were doing with the autopan thing. And that, you could have like several chains as well. Like you could have a chain with what you were doing, and then have 3 chains, and then they all have their wet dry, like all 33% or something. Or I mean, there's many ways you could do it.
Yeah, the best sounds you get are a conglomeration of a whole bunch of effects.
Right.
It's like making a soup, and you're putting all these little things in it, and sometimes you just want to add a little bit, you know, taste it. And it's the same way with effects. You just add an effect to the end. The good news is with this, you can actually pull the ingredients out if you don't like something.
Yes.
And with a soup, you're kind of stuck with it. But I will say, in time, after doing this, yeah, you get to the point where you know exactly what these effects are going to do. So this sounds kind of like an old, dirty piece of equipment, you know, and it's probably not ultimately what we want. I still think it's a little too static, which is why I want this thing we built originally. We'll just call this the Variator 1.
Good.
And a good idea right now, because I probably want to reuse this at some point, is to save the preset. So anytime I can just go back here and...
And you're not, what I see, and this is something that I don't see a lot with people I work with, they're afraid of duplicating and having multiple instances of the same thing. For what reason I don't know, but they are very careful not to repeat themselves, and this is not what you're doing at all. I see that you just go like no shame, just like doing it, right?
Exactly, and I think that's really important. I think everyone should force themselves to go down these paths quite frequently, and surprisingly it can be super fun, you know, especially once you get rid of the idea that in some sessions of sitting here, it's like sketching. You get rid of the idea that you're going to try to produce something magnificent that everybody will love. You just want to explore the world of sound and how far you can sort of take it. And if you record all your output, or you find a song you like and record it and you put it in your library, then you have a collection for later. I don't know how many times I've been doing these sessions and the sounds sounded like garbage, but I always got something out of it, like a rack that I could reuse later, like I showed you, saving it as a preset. Or a sound that I recorded that sounded like garbage maybe in the moment, but then a year later or more, I was able to go back and just, in my archive of old sounds, pull it into a new track, and wow, I pitch it down and it actually sounds perfect.
Yeah.
So it's surprising how much, like, there's no such thing as a garbage sound.
No.
In context, everything can be useful and amazing.